Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our SmartBear Academy, our TestComplete 101. My name is Damien Walsh, and I'm joined by my colleague, Martin McDonough.
Hey, Damien. Good morning.
Good morning, Martin. How are you? So we're going to talk about a little bit about TestComplete today. So there's myself and Martin, our good selves. I think we got our haircuts set, did we?
I think so.
I think we got nearly matching jumpers and shirts.
Yeah, apart from my hair color, I think that's the only change there.
Yeah, well, it's just for men does help a lot there. So what we're going to look at today, getting back to the serious stuff, we're going to look at what is automated testing. We're looking at the TestComplete UI. We're going to look at TestComplete projects, so how TestComplete projects are working. Look at the object model as well and checkpoints, and then look at the name mapping, which is kind of how TestComplete recognizes controls. So hopefully from that you will kind of go and download a trial, have a go and see how it works for you. Before we jump into the tool, automation is kind of something that some people do, some people don't. Some people are currently manual testing. And I suppose to kind of get an idea of what people are looking at, we have one or two polls as we go down through the session today. And one I'd like to kick off, I suppose right away, Martin, is what kind of testing people are doing. You know, are they doing manual testing? So let's put that poll up there on the site there and see what people are doing. So what are you doing manual testing? Are you currently doing some automated testing? Doing no testing? Some people aren't. Some people are just currently developing. Got a lot of startups going on around the world. The whole thing with the IT and the whole thing with technology nowadays. There's a lot more companies starting off. So, you do have that kind of ability. Now we are seeing, again, fluctuation between manual and automated, but again, we do have people using automated testing. Interesting. So, if we kind of end that poll there and understand a little bit more about what automation is, and automated testing is a way of kind of reducing testing times, using a tool to help you reduce the hours you spend testing. You look at kind of, for example, a web application, and logging on to a web application with 100 or even 10 different users of different responsibilities can take quite a long time. If we're to automate that very, very quickly against maybe a spreadsheet or a database or something like that, it will cut down on what's the word for it? Repetitive tasks. You will kind of get it will become tedious and it will become boring if you start entering different username and passwords across the board, and also going through the spreadsheet or Word document, whatever you have for understanding those. But the whole thing there is that is the ability to kind of do that automatically. Yeah,
and I don't think we're saying that one is better than the other.
No.
I think we're really just saying it really comes down to what you want to achieve. If it's a case where manual testing has been something that you've been doing all the time, maybe it's a case that over the next course of months that maybe automation tasks are going to come into play, and maybe you're rolling out more projects. The thing you mentioned there about data-driven testing and even keyword testing is that not everyone is a scripter, or not everyone has the time to go ahead and enter manual data. So this is where the automation piece comes into play, and also focusing on the correct information, being able to share that with defect tracking systems and making sure that you're capturing the correct results as well.
Yeah, and the whole thing again, and I did say in the poll, it was doing some automation. A lot of people that are kind of skeptical or still kind of in that whole manual process are afraid to kind of go to automated because fear of the unknown, fear of complexity, fear of kind of getting out of their comfort zone. And it's a way of kind of understanding what tools would help you kind of get you introduced to automation very quickly and show you the benefit of that. Now, with any automation, you're not going to get 100% of automating things. And we say this a lot of the time to people we talk to. You cannot automate everything. Some of the kind of really dynamic applications like video games, you can't. What's the Fortnite? Can imagine trying to automate that. I think that's one of the big games at the moment out there. But there are kind of other like e-commerce, financial applications, all those kind of different kind of native applications that are some static content and things like that can certainly be automated for you. And again, I like to emphasize the word automated. I've said it enough times there now, but just to remember kind of what are the benefits like for automation, and what you want to get from that. What are your pain points at the moment when it comes to testing? And once you have addressed those, or once you've written those down, then it's a matter of finding the best solution, the best way forward for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we've rambled enough on about kind of what is automation, and why you would and why you wouldn't use this. But again, what we're going to explain to you today is the benefits of TestComplete, which is our front-end UI automation tool for automating desktop, web, and mobile applications. And the whole thing here around TestComplete, and you mentioned already, Martin, is to be able to create a script very, very quickly. And that's the key. You don't want to spend 2, 3, 4 weeks, having purchased an automation tool and then not knowing how to use it. You want to be able to create a script very quickly. It's like Christmas time, when you get a toy and of Santa, and all of a sudden there's no batteries. You can't use it.
Yeah.
Like that remote control car that is supposed to do 100 miles an hour, and it doesn't do anything because the batteries are not there and shops are closed.
I haven't heard that one before, but I think it's a great way of saying, it makes complete sense if you purchase a software,
Yep.
You're using a software and you don't know how to use it. I think it's a great example.
You do, and you need to have that comfort level. Again, you give an iPhone to a person in an older generation, they won't know what to do with it. It's the same with the manual tester. You give them an automation tool that needs scripting. You need to know JavaScript inside out. They are not going to adopt to it. TestComplete does that for you very, very quickly, very, very efficiently. So a little bit of background as to, and maybe kind of start off with TestComplete. And what you have here and what you're looking at the moment is kind of the start screen. And what you have is kind of an easy way to kind of record, create new projects, even do a quick tour of TestComplete. You'll also see here, once you create projects, there will be kind of a shortcut to kind of clicking on the link to your project. So you might be involved with multiple projects, maybe a desktop, maybe a web application, or maybe you have a web application and you're now you create a mobile application which is similar. You want to test that. So you can split the projects up into kind of different types of applications. But as you go down through the start page, you'll start to see what is available. So we talked about kind of self-training. Our community is a big thing for us, where we've got our community experts, and these are people that are using the tool for a number of years since it's basically come out, and they provide. And these are not staff. These are not staff belong to SmartBear. These are end users, and they will provide you with feedback and stuff like that. So use that. Use our support portal as well. Use the documentation. It's all, we get comments quite a lot about our support, about our documentation, and we pride ourselves in that way. And same comes when you start using the tool. First off, during a trial period, this is all available to you. You'll also see down further then you've got our kind of video center, and these are kind of small 2-minute videos on how to use the tool. So from starting off creating your tests and so on and so forth to running a test. But if we look at kind of if I just take a step back for a second and show you a little bit about, so we're talking about the UI, and we're going to talk about projects, and we're going to create a project in a second. But before I do, let me go back in here to the tool again. So you've got your project, and what you have here is you've got your different tests. So on the left-hand side here, I've got my project suite, and the top half is all about my kind of artifacts that I'm using. So all the keyword tests, all the scripts I'm working with. And then the bottom half then are all the log files generated from the tests. Now, a lot of people will kind of wonder what comes out of a test, and if we look at kind of a project, and you saw just there a second ago, I've got a number of tests that I have associated to the project, and I want to go and run that project. And once I run that project, a log is generated. And that log will show me a summary of tests that were done. So let me go back, scroll down here. Let me just get maybe a better one here. So this one here, for example, if I look at the summary here, it shows me when the test started, when it stopped, and the duration of the test. It also showed me who ran the test on what machine. So, if you want to kind of run a test across different environments, VMs, remote desktops, we can do that for you. And it also shows you the graphical representation of pass, fail, and error. People like to see a few graphs here and there. You can do that as well. For each keyword test that's generated, or for each test that's generated, there's going to be a log file created. So from your web to what version of browser you're working with, and we do support all these browser versions, to screenshots as well. So a lot of people want to know, like, what is the output from the log files? And we provide screenshots across the board where it's showing what steps, what objects are being used at that particular step. So for example, this is the username. And as we go down through this test, you can see here the username has been entered in, the password. All right? But the whole thing with automation and the whole thing with testing is, we want to be able to make sure that there's no issues with it. And if there are issues with it, where the issues are bugs, depending on what terminology you use. And this instance here, what we're looking at here is and if I zoom in a bit for people, what we're looking at here is we're looking at a total. And there's my object here. It's my total for a particular order I've created. So I'm working with it. And I'll show you the application in a second. We'll go through creating a project and creating a test. But in this instance here, it's saying the actual is 80, but the expected is 90. And it could be a few things. It could be your database, since you've last run the test, you haven't rolled back the data in the database. Or it could be since you last run the test, your developers have changed something in here. So inside this object here, and there's something out of sync there. Now, if it is the database and we need to kind of update the expected with the actual, you can simply update the checkpoint here. And we'll talk a little bit about checkpoints in a second. We'll go through those as well. But the whole thing here is that once I click on that link, it'll update the expected with the actual. So we don't need to go into SQL Plus or Query Analyzer to update that value. Now, the other things we hear a lot about, especially in the whole thing, and going back to automation, with the whole thing with Agile and a lot of applications, being modified, being changed on a regular basis, not just monthly now, it's nearly weekly. A lot of people, and I think that the whole thing here, a lot of people use 2-week sprints. And, a lot can change in a 2-week sprint. And, for a developer to go and find out exactly what's happened, they need to be able to find the steps that reproduce. And traditionally, when you've got a manual test, the tester will go and take screenshots of every step that they've done. But inside of here, you can also go and upload the files, or upload this log file to, say, Jira, Bugzilla, and all that kind of stuff. And what it's doing is going to upload this MHT file to your Jira instance or to your Bugzilla, or you can even email that. So now the developers, without having TestComplete, can also see the steps to reproduce and also the message as well, or the error message.
The error message, exactly, yeah. So what we're really showing here in that particular test log is, you hit the nail on the head there a moment ago, was what the actual output was during recording and during playback, and was there any changes between the both. And I think, take the example of running a test within that 2 weeks apart, what has changed. Maybe a text box has moved across the page or something like that. So with these logs, you'll be able to easily understand and recognize these, and as you mentioned there, share with someone who's not actually using TestComplete. So someone like a developer who wants to just see the actual error and go ahead and fix the bug. So having this executed from an automation perspective, running on maybe a nightly batch job, makes it a lot easier to get these particular logs sent to your email or sent to your defect tracking system as well.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose before we get started, another question then for everyone is, Martin, if we kick off that poll there, the other poll I have, I like to kick off a few other polls here. So the poll we have is around what type of application you're testing. So are you testing your web, desktop, or mobile? And let's see if we can, what people are using here. I know some people said a lot of people said they're using automated testing. If you can let us know what kind of applications you're working with, and we can go with those as well and show you an example of that. All right. So the whole thing here is that you guys are going to drive what application I'm going to show. So I've got a web, I've got a desktop, and I've got a mobile. And what I'll do here is based on the kind of consensus here, which is usually it's web, but I think here we've got a little bit of head start.
Let it run for another 20 seconds.
Let it run for another 20 seconds. Any more takers? Desktop is just edging out at the moment.
Oh. I think we're going to go down the desktop route today.
We're going to go down the desktop route. Okay, perfect. So desktop it is. So I've got a WPF application, you've got Delphi, you've got Java, it's a whole host of applications. And that's the thing with TestComplete is we do support a number of different frameworks. So, whether it's AngularJS, whether it's HTML5, or the latest kind of frameworks for web development, we support that. And, these are being updated constantly. So just kind of in a passing note, all our tools in SmartBear, we do have releases every quarter, and these are kind of major releases. So new functions, new features, and defects fixed as well and bugs.
Yeah.
So even though we do provide quality tools to improve the quality of software, we do need to improve our own software as well. And that's what we're doing constantly. All right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So a project is where you're going to create your tests and work with the system. And you got different projects that you can work with, or different applications, as I said before, desktop, web, mobile, Android or iOS devices. And what we're going to do today is we're going to do it with our desktop application. And I've got a WPF one. Now, what we can do is we can provide the location of the executable, or we can let TestComplete find that. And I think I'm going to let TestComplete do a bit of work today. We've just come off a bank holiday, so we're just getting warmed up at the moment. Isn't that right, Martin?
That sounds good to me.
So Martin was at a wedding. He's the best man. He's doing a speech, so he's come down off his buzz after the weekend.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's go and create our test here now. And if you do have a testing team and you are getting in and you are creating and building up your testing team, your frameworks and stuff like that, or if you do want to get someone in from external to help you, we do have the ability to do scripts, or do create scripts using different scripting languages.
So a common question that comes up is when we talk to a number of people interested, or someone who's just started using TestComplete, is do you need to be an expert in scripting to be able to use the tool?
The short answer is no. No, because TestComplete is designed to make sure that a manual tester can go and create a script very, very quickly. And I'll show that in a few minutes. The whole thing here is that as people start moving from a manual process to an automated process, they don't want to do that straight away. They want to do this slowly and surely. And that's what TestComplete does. It allows you to build up your experience in automation, so that when that you become fully automated, TestComplete grows with you. So you can then, if you start maybe learning a bit of scripting, you can then do a bit more complex scripting. So you can do some back end, maybe database stuff, and maybe API stuff, all that kind of other end-to-end testing. And that's the whole thing, is that initially where you want to create automated tests from manual tests, you can do that using TestComplete. But then as your system and as your complexity grows, so will TestComplete help you grow with as well.
So we're really saying that everything that can be done from scripting language can be done from a codeless perspective. And I suppose that's one of the key areas of TestComplete.
Exactly. That's the key thing, is that when people come from a manual background, that they can just click on a button, record the steps, play that back. All right? Simple as. And this is my project I've created here, right? Now, so again, the whole thing here is that record keyword test is the main kind of one that I will work with today. And that's what a lot of people that get introduced to automation will use. And really what that is it allows you to record the steps you're doing in the application, and it'll create a keyword test for you. Again, simple to do. So I'm going to record a keyword test here now. And let me introduce you to my orders application, WPF application. So what I'm going to do here now we do have a 3D one as well, don't we?
We do.
I must bring that out someday as well.
It's 2018 now.
I know, yeah. See, I'm still stuck in the Stone Ages, right? So we'll create a new order here, and I'm going to just do a few things. And remember, this is recording all the steps here. So we talked about, I mentioned at the beginning about the agenda and checkpoints. So we talked a little bit about the UI, TestComplete UI, the keyword test, the scripts, the different functionality, how to modify, how to find new training and all that kind of stuff, and log files, etc. But checkpoints are kind of things you're going to use quite a lot as you start using, as you start doing front-end UI automation. And we do have a number of different checkpoints. You can see here. Now, the one that's most commonly used is our property check, object property. Now, again, there's a number of different ones. We'll talk a little bit about those in a second. But the object property is one that's used quite regularly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the bullseye. And that bullseye is used to highlight the individual controls within your application. So, for example, I want to check that the total is equal to 80 based on the quantity. I can do that. So what TestComplete is about, it's about looking at the control name. So it's looking at the control name, not XY coordinates, not image-based recognition. So if I was to move this total field here down to, say, the bottom of the form, the test will still work. It's looking for that control name. All right, it's important from that.
So essentially, it's a validation.
It's a validation,
or
yeah.
Assertion, if there's so many different names that we call it, but basically we're making sure that the object is appearing on the page, and in this case, creating in the next step the correct value. So we can go ahead and specify that, okay, if it's not equaling to the value of 80, then the test will fail, and as you showed in your logs earlier.
Exactly. And if we look at here, the properties, so these are the properties of the control. So when I first started using TestComplete way back in a while now, I was amazed at the number of properties a control has. Like you look at the total there, and what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at the WText equal to 80. But if we look at the advanced section here, these are all properties of that control. So as you said, Martin, if I want to check the visibility, I can do that. I want to make sure that it's visible on screen. So let's go and have a look at visible on screen here. So what I have here now is I'm checking that the text is equal to 80 and that the object is visible on screen. I can go with other stuff as well, but these are all properties that I can check against. So that's my checkpoint created. Let me go and finish off some of the rest of the information here now.
So when we talked a bit about properties, how many object properties does TestComplete support offhand?
Oh, good question.
Is it 50,000?
It probably is around that, yeah.
I believe it's 50,000. It's just when you showed that checkpoint and you've created, okay, an equals to WText, and you can maybe add in multiple different properties as well. You're kind of, I suppose, you're getting more value when you're actually looking at it visible on screen, and also if the actual text is appearing correctly. So in our object model and our name mapping, I believe it's 50,000 that we support in terms of object properties.
That's quite a lot. 50,000 is a big number in any way, shape or form.
And as you mentioned, you wouldn't, I suppose you wouldn't realize from one little object how many properties it should have or it would have.
Exactly, and it gives you that flexibility to work with those properties as well, as and when you need to. Yeah. But this is our keyword created here now. All right, simple as. So again, you can see here that I'm selecting the product name and family album. I'm selecting the quantity, and I'm selecting one. I can even look at it from a visual point of view. So if I look here look at the visualizer. So again, it's just clicking on the product, it's clicking on the quantity, all that kind of stuff. All right. So I can very easily do the screenshots there as well. So it does it based on the keyword test, but it also does it based on screenshots as well. And again, if I do miss something, TestComplete has the ability to cache all the objects. So I can go now and I can go and insert on-screen action, and I can go insert keys. So I can do a lot of different things with it now once I've got the test created. But let's go and play that back. So I've created my keyword test. I can run that test. So this is called record and playback. So fingers crossed and toes crossed and everything crossed. This is going to create my keyword test. So from me clicking on the application to me creating my order to me checking the total value. So these are all kind of steps that will be done inside the application very, very quickly and very, very efficiently. If you were to do that, and we'll talk a little bit about it in a second, do that 50,000 times, taking your thing, 50,000 is quite a lot. But you can see here now that TestComplete now has passed, which is good, and it's passed all the checks as well.
So when you've created, in this case, you have 2 checkpoints, we'll just say for a web application or for any particular type of application, what would you suggest in terms of how many checkpoints you would have per screen? Is there a certain amount?
I don't have a hard limit. I suppose there can be overkill on the number of checkpoints that are created. I personally don't have. Again, it's down to how robust you want your application to be, and how kind of the quality of the application, and what kind of objects you're going to use a lot of the time. You're going to use the total all the time when you're using an orders application or an e-commerce or some way of purchasing an application. So you will kind of use that kind of application a lot,
sure,
right? But there's no hard and fast rule as to limit the number of things. Now, with every kind of checkpoint, there will be kind of an impact on the test run and stuff like that. But again, the whole idea is to make sure that the UI is functioning as expected. So I've got my application there and I've got my screenshot as well, okay? Now, one other thing is that when I created my project, I chose not to have the location of where my application was. And you can see here that it now picks up the location of my executable in the tested app section. All right? So there's my little tested app section, and there's my executable. So that's creating the keyword test very, very quickly. And you can see here that because it's got all the steps, it's got all my keyword tests. If I want to do is I can certainly convert that to a script if I wanted. And that'll convert to JavaScript. So those people that, if you want to get your developers involved from a more complex automation, you can do that. You can give them, say, here's, you can show them that a bit about scripting. You say, here's a JavaScript. So, it builds up a kind of a good relationship with the developer that you say, well, look at here, I've got a JavaScript for you. Can you modify that?
Yeah, and we have all the screenshots at the bottom as well.
All the screenshots at the bottom, yeah, exactly. So let me just pull that up. And there's all the screenshots from a script point of view as well. But the whole thing as well about the keyword test is, things like unexpected windows, if I forgot to fill in the, if I wanted to, like maybe as part of my next test, I want to fill in the street before the customer name. I can move that up and down. So this is all changeable. This is all, you can edit this very, very quickly, this keyword test. Also what I got here is I got my operations section. And this is useful as well in that I can add in if then else statements. I can also do for while loops. I can do checkpoints. And we talk about checkpoints as well quite a lot when we're creating our tests. And these are the different checkpoints that are created. So if you look at the property checkpoint, other people use web comparisons, web accessibility, where you want to make sure that objects are accessible across the board. We can do database checkpoints, region checkpoints, which might be image-based. So, if I want to check that, the logo is on each page, I can do that using the region checkpoint. I can do comparisons as well. And, again, if you're familiar with the mobile checkpoints, you can do that as well. So there's a number of different ways of validating different objects in different applications. All right.
Yeah. So just while we're after covering that section, or majority of it, just gonna open the floor up just if there's any questions. So we've covered quite a lot over the last.
We have, yeah.
30 minutes.
Exactly. So. We've rambled quite a lot. I've rambled quite a lot.
So if there's any questions at all, please enter them in the chat window or the Q&A. More than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, and don't be afraid. These sessions are just to help you guys. Are we showing the right thing? Is this beneficial to you? Recording a test, all that kind of stuff. the next kind of stage then will kind of build up on that test, testing across multiple different data sets as well. And what I showed you with the desktop is going to be the exact same thing with the web application. All right. Any takers, Martin?
Not yet.
Everyone's quiet.
I'm hopeful that we'll get a couple of questions.
I think everyone might have been on a bank holiday. So how do we then expand out that test? So let's say, for example, what I've got here is I've got let's just say I want to go and run a test across multiple different data sources. And the whole thing here is that if you've got an Excel spreadsheet, a CSV file, or any ODBC compliant database, you can work with that. So if I go and let me just share one of my tests here. So I've got a spreadsheet here with a number of different orders. And what I want to do is I want to loop across that. So what I can do is I can highlight me creating a new order and filling in all the details. So that's what I want to loop against. I want to loop against what's in my spreadsheet, or in my CSV file, I should say. So what we can do is we can make a data loop. I can also make a browse loop if I'm working with my web applications. So if I want to loop across multiple different browsers. So we support IE, Firefox, and Chrome, and we can support all the latest browser versions as well. So especially with Chrome and Firefox, I think we have new releases every day now at this stage with Firefox and Chrome. So we will support all those browsers as well. With data loops, same thing for desktop, web, and mobile. We can also do data-driven testing. So I can store that new variable. So let's go new orders, and that can be used across the project again. So I can reference at any time. Now, if I zoom in here a bit for people, what I can do here is I can look at a spreadsheet. I can look at a CSV file. I can also look at a database, so a table or a query. All right. So any ODBC compliant database. Now for this instance here, I'm going to work with my CSV file, which I just showed you here a second ago. All right, so my customer street, card number, all that kind of stuff. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and open up this here. Actually, let me just go back. Wrong one. That should be it. No, I have so many different ones, it's not funny. Let's go on, third time lucky. So this one here shows me the orders that I have here. So different users, different products, all that kind of stuff. Now, what I can do here is I normally keep this from beginning to end so that if I add any more data into the CSV file, it's not going to impact the script. Everyone good so far? Can everyone hear me?
I believe so, yeah.
Perfect. I just saw someone raise their hand there. So.
Yeah, so if you can't hear us, if you have a question or anything like that, please enter it in the questions and answers box. So you can see here on the right hand side, I've got my hard-coded values. So I've got my customer name, I've got my street, I've got my city, right? I now want to loop with what's in my spreadsheet. So I'm going to map this to the columns in my CSV file. So if I go down here a bit further and show my customer and street and all that kind of stuff, you'll see here now once I finish that off, that if I zoom in here a bit for people, I've now got a data-driven loop, and I'm now using the variables. So I haven't got the hard-coded values anymore. I've got the variables. So the customer, the product, all that kind of stuff. So if I was to run this test here now, it would create 6 different orders for me based on what's on my spreadsheet. So imagine having to, having to do that manually. It'll probably take you 10, 15, 20 minutes. Whereas now you can do that very, very quickly, probably less than a minute. So that's building out your test coverage very, very quickly. And if you're part of a web application and you do that across 3 different browsers, if I had 6 new records across 3 different browsers, I could create my test coverage, 17, 18 different scenarios very, very quickly. Whereas now I've only got 1 application, 1 username, and 1 record. I can now expand it out depending on how much I want to test against. So the whole test coverage, the spread of the test coverage can expand rapidly with TestComplete. Okay? Yeah, so just a question come in there regarding JSON file data source. So Primarily, it would need to be an Excel or a CSV. If you wanted to work with a JSON data source, we do have an integration with SoapUI Pro where you can use, within SoapUI Pro, you can use a JSON data source, and then you can execute the SoapUI Pro test within a TestComplete test as well. So, Damien, if you just want to show that very quickly.
Yep. So there you go. You can run your SoapUI script there.
And this SoapUI Pro script can use a data source of a JSON file, and again, we can share more information offline with that as well.
Yeah, so if you've got the XML file there, you can then run that test inside of your keyword test as well. All right, so it's about reusability. You know, if I did have a script here as well, so if I had another script, I can also run a batch file, or I can run a database script as well. So it's not catered for just the front-end UI. It also has that ability to work with your different third-party systems as well.
Yeah, it's really the end-to-end.
Exactly. That's a good point there. It's the whole end-to-end as well. You know, what might start out with manually testing a subsection of your desktop application, so as part of phase one, but then as you continue on, you've now got your full end-to-end testing from your API to your database to whatever, okay? So you can build that out inside of your scripts as well. All right. Any other questions on there, Martin?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Martin's keeping them all quiet there.
Yep.
So that's creating my keyword test. That's creating my scripts. That's modifying my scripts. So, you know, I've talked there for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I've created a script. I've modified it to go across multiple different data sets. I've also added in an API, and I've also added in a database. So within a space of 10 minutes, I'm able to do that. And it goes back to the question as well, is that, you know, I didn't need to know anything about scripting. You know, my developers could give me the API. My developer could give me the unit test. I can just plug that in. I don't need to know what it does. They'll troubleshoot if it doesn't work. But I know that when I run that test, it checks that the database record is created.
Yeah.
So I've got my whole end-to-end without even touching the scripting there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the operations panel that you showed there as well, if you wanted to add in some statements or, you know, complex if statements or even else statements or anything like that, by just dragging and dropping, you can easily go ahead and achieve that. And, you know, we've done a lot of exercises over the last couple of months with using if statements, and then when you convert that to a script, the if statement will show up as well. So it's pretty awesome to be able to go ahead and, without any scripting knowledge, be able to create a complex test. Exactly.
And, you know, you can also do, like it says, for while loops. You can also do kind of logging, if you want to do kind of logging of error messages that might be happening there as well. So it does have that ability to work with different systems. All right. So that's around creating a keyword test. That's around developing the keyword test, you know, modifying it, working with the keyword test. A lot of people then, you know, when they start using TestComplete, will straight away start creating a test that, you know, I log on to the application, I create a new order, I do this, I do that. So all of a sudden, I've got a keyword test that's got, you know, 500 steps in there, and you know, how do I then, if anything goes wrong, how do I troubleshoot that? So what I've just done while I've been talking to people is I've created 3 dummy scripts, right? And these are just like small little blocks. So what I normally recommend to people that are using TestComplete is that they start off small. You know, they start off by just creating a script to log on to the application, right? They create a script to log off the application. So then when I create my test suite, so this is my number of tests, I can build it out, small block by block, logging onto the application, creating a new order, running my test 1, test 2, then logging out. So I'm able to do that in small blocks. And if anything does go wrong, if anything does error out, I can troubleshoot that very, very easy and very, very effectively. It also helps with maintenance.
Yeah, and so for just take the example of the login. So, you know, the login obviously is probably one of the most common keyword tests or tests that needs to be run. So you can reuse that login test across any keyword test realistically. So instead of having to script it or record it each time, you're just reusing based on the same application that you're working with, as an example from there. So you're basically just dragging and dropping and saying, okay, I can run my login, keep that consistent across all my tests. And then if I need to run an append to test to add in more steps, or take the steps from a test that I've already created. I can easily do that within a couple of clicks.
Yeah, exactly. So if you did, let's just say as part of this test here now, you've run a test, and all of a sudden the developers have changed something within the next regression test. So let's say as part of when you click OK, another issue happens. So I can go, as you said, Martin, append to test and record the steps that are required after the OK button. So, or even if I just want to record that, so maybe as part of this, when I click on the OK, it goes to the order form. I can go and do that. So I can create an individual small block then and run that in my keyword test that needs required. Okay? So it's all about reusability, building small blocks, building it out. As I say, block by block, you build a pretty big house. So, again, block by block, you'll build a very comprehensive test framework.
Exactly. And you don't, if we see a really, really long test full of multiple steps that can be going through, say 20 pages of a site or something like that, e-commerce example. I suppose in general you want to keep it kind of on a block basis, making sure that you can reuse that functionality each time, because maybe you're looping through a number of different orders that you want to place, going through a checkout cart, for instance, doing your login. You're always going to reuse all of these steps across multiple different tests that you're creating.
Yep, exactly. So that's another way, and you can also, as it says, do this via. So if I want to, excuse me. If you want to create your kind of folder structure as well, we can also do that and maintain that. So again, it's about maintaining some of the best practice around that. So let's have a quick check on our agenda. So we talked a little bit about our automation. We talked about our UI. We talked about projects. We talked a little bit about the object modeling, so how TestComplete is recognizing controls. We talked also about the checkpoints. Name mapping I'd like to touch on, we're looking here about 15 minutes. So let's talk a little bit about name mapping. So if I open up my application here again. So if we look at I'm going to go with the customer. So if we look at the customer object here, if I go and right click here and show the object in name mapping editor, these are the controls that TestComplete, this is the internal kind of repository that TestComplete captures based on the application and the object you're working with. So if I zoom in here a bit for you, so you can see here I've got my customer, and it's under my orders form here. And what it's doing up here at the top, it's looking at the properties, the unique properties of that control. So what TestComplete does, it has got an internal algorithm that it uses to recognize controls. So you don't need to do anything about that. This is what TestComplete does automatically to recognize the controls. You can see here as well the product names and state, the street, and all that kind of stuff. Now, sometimes you may have an application that might not have unique values, and I can go and do that. So if I go in here and right click on customer, I can edit properties. So if I want to go and add in, say, an ID string, for example, I can do that. So if I go UID, I can add in that to make it more uniquely identifiable. Also,
so just to touch on that, the alias and the mapped objects. So I think that's something that probably is going to make more sense. The alias is really when we've done our recording and our mapped object. So you can actually check if the object has been mapped. So if that customer object has been mapped.
Sorry, yeah. Go back in here again. Show find mapped object.
Yeah. So this is going to let us know if the actual object has been mapped after the playback of the actual test case.
Now, another question that people ask, Martin, is that do I need to have do I need to record all the steps and click on all the objects to get into the repository? That's the easiest way to do it. If you want to kind of map the objects before you start recording, before you start creating tests, you can certainly do that. You can go and add an object. So you can map that automatically. So maybe it's not in the mapped objects here section. I can map it very quickly, very, very, very easily. All right, and there is wizards to help you with that. So those of you that are familiar with automation and want to kind of start creating your scripts quickly, and maybe you don't have the full application available, you can do that. All right. Now the other thing as well, a lot of people will do is that based on the application, you might have some dynamic controls. So for example, customer might change every time you log on to the application. So it might go from 1, 2, 3. I could do type 1, 2, 3, 4 now to 5, 6, 7, 8. So what we can do here is we can wildcard that out. And that will then allow me to kind of handle dynamic controls. Other things like, pop-up windows, all that kind of stuff can be managed by our general events. So the whole name mapping will help you kind of identify controls very, very quickly, but also help you kind of customize those controls and work with them more dynamically as well.
So, and say if for in this case we have WPF control name of customer, so we know this is to do with the customer label and focusing on that customer text box, as you can see here. If it's the case that we have in another application text box and the reference name is just text box, do we have a number of other properties that we can choose from?
Yeah, exactly. So if you look up here and look at the edit, you can see all the properties of that control. So you can use something that uniquely identifies it. So you might see here I've got my text box, but I can see down here if I go and do, let's see, customer, I can see here if I could type, so I can see here the name called customer name. All right, so I can look at the properties that finds the label for that control and makes it more uniquely identifiable.
So if it's a case that you're having an issue with, having an identifiable object, it may be the case that the object is not uniquely identifiable enough.
Exactly. So you can use the name mapping as well. Now again, going back to as well where you've got customers that are applications that are kind of I suppose the naming reference isn't great. So I've highlighted there the card number, and you can see here that it's got card no. It may be text box 1 or text box 2, but I can customize that so that when I change that to card number and go back into my test 2 here, if I scroll down, you can see here now that's changed from card no to card number. Now, it hasn't changed anything in the source file or in the application itself, because if I go back in here to the application and right click and find mapped object, you still see here that's still card no. So I'm not changing anything, I'm just changing the references that TestComplete use. So it makes it easier for me to create the test more easier.
Yep.
Right? So that's a little bit about the name mapping and what it does and how it can benefit for you. Again, the whole thing here is that simplicity, ease of use, ease of creation of the test. If you want to kind of get into, I suppose, another question for people out there, how many people are doing regression testing already? How many people do kind of sprint cycles? So it's not a poll that I have, but I'm throwing that question out there.
Yeah, we'd like to get your feedback.
So people that are on the call, can you let me know, are you doing some sort of regression testing? Because if you are doing, this section will be useful for you to know. So you look at kind of different releases. So release 1, and let's go on it in release 2. Right? So as part of my release 1, I might in a sprint 1.1. And I'm going ahead and sprint here to this one here. So what I've got is I've got my release cycle. So what I can do here as part of release 1, sprint 1, I can log on to the application and create a new order. And then as part of sprint 2, sprint 1.1, I can go and run my test 2 and log out. And I may even want to go and run my automated script as well, or my database, backend database. So run my test 2, and then as part of that test 2, run my script. So what I can do here is I'm building up my regression test framework. Now again, hope everyone's following me, but this is what it allows you to kind of build up your regression test framework. So what I can do as part of cycle 1, or release cycle 1, I can go and just uncheck release 2, and that will run all the tests here for me. All right. So maybe as part of release 1, I need to run a test as part of that's already in release 2, sprint 1. So maybe as part of release 1, sprint 1, I want to run my login script, create a new order, and I want to log out. So let's go and check that. And I'm going to do sprint 1. And there we go. So what I've done now here is I've gone and used a script from my other sprints as well. So it's all about reusability. So we talked about building blocks, but then as you become part of a more bigger framework, like a regression test framework, you can reuse scripts as well. So that when I go and run my scenario, maybe at a batch job or using Jenkins, whatever, during the nightly build, nightly execution, I can chop and change as I want to go along. All right, so that's about reusing and creating your regression test framework. All right. So that's a little bit about TestComplete. The exact same thing will be for your web and your mobile. So any questions, Martin? We have about 5 minutes.
Yeah, none at the moment, but yeah, guys, if you have any questions, we'd be very interested to hear any feedback as well. You're doing regression testing. Is data source or data-driven testing a key area for you? What about browser looping as well? Are you testing across multiple browsers? And again, we got a bit of feedback. Most people are using desktop-based.
Yep.
So what type of desktop application are you using as well? Is it Delphi-based? Is it, is it C# based, or is it, etc. So I'd be very interested to hear your feedback.
Yeah, and what I would do as well is I'd certainly download a trial of TestComplete and give it a go. It's fully supported, so either myself or Martin or someone belonging to the technical team will be on hand to help you, even support team. But please don't be afraid to reach out if you do need assistance, and we can help you out. Okay, but hopefully this session has helped you understand a little bit more about whether you need automation. I think a lot of people are doing some sort of automation at the moment. For those that are doing manual testing, it gives you a chance to understand what tools are out there like TestComplete, how they can be used very, very quickly and up and running very, very quickly, and how you can build on those tests as well. So hopefully from those kind of lessons that you learned today, that you will kind of have a go at it. I always recommend people to download a trial and test out in their own application, because what we show you here in our own environment might be a bit different. But again, as Martin says, we got about 50,000 properties or controls, properties we use. So, a lot of different applications we do support. And TestComplete will more often than not work with your environment.
Thank you to Damien for bringing us through the session today. I think it was very valuable and a really nice introduction to TestComplete and automated testing as well. We went through some really key areas where this can help you out, from creating the test up as far as the actual getting ready to run that regression suite. So thanks very much for running the session today, Damien.
Yeah, and thanks, Martin, for fielding the questions and also helping me out as well.
Yeah, no problem. So listen, guys, everyone have a great day, and thank you for joining the SmartBear Academy today. Thanks.